At 0700 on October 4, 1943, Colonel Hubert Zemp stood on the hard stand at RAF Haleworth watching mechanics fuel 52 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts for a bomber escort mission deep into Germany. 29 years old, 6 months of combat, 4 confirmed kills. The Luftwaffe sent 180 FW-190s and Me-109s to defend the industrial targets his bombers would hit that morning. Every pilot climbing into those cockpits knew the numbers. The P-47 Thunderbolt weighed 7 tons empty. The German Focke-Wulf 190 weighed less than 4. In a turning fight, physics won. The lighter fighter turned tighter. The heavier fighter died. Zemp's 56th Fighter Group had lost 11 aircraft in their first 4 months of combat. 4 pilots killed, 7 captured. The Germans called the Thunderbolt the Jug, short for Juggernaut, a flying tank that couldn't dogfight. American bomber crews watched P-47s try to protect them and saw the truth. When Focke-Wulfs attacked, the Thunderbolts couldn't stay with them through the turns. Luftwaffe pilots broke away from bomber formations knowing the heavy American fighters wouldn't follow through the vertical maneuvers, and they were right. On June 26, 1943, Zemp's group engaged Jagdgeschwader 26 over France. Veteran German pilots flew circles around the P-47s, literally. 5 Thunderbolts went down, 4 American pilots died. Captain Robert Johnson barely made it home with his aircraft shot to pieces. His Thunderbolt had taken over 200 cannon hits and still flew. But it hadn't won the fight. The mathematics was simple. A Focke-Wulf 190 could turn inside a P-47 every single time. At 15,000 feet, the German fighter completed a 360-degree turn in 22 seconds. The Thunderbolt needed 28. 6 seconds in combat. That meant death. 8th Air Force generals watched their fighter group struggle and made plans to replace the P-47 with the new P-51 Mustang. Lighter, faster in level flight, better range. The Thunderbolt program looked like a failed experiment. 5 other fighter groups were scheduled to transition to Mustangs by the end of 1943. But Zemp had spent 2 years testing the P-47 before the war. He knew something the Germans didn't. The Thunderbolt couldn't turn, but it could dive. The massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine generated 2,000 horsepower. The thick wing and heavy airframe stayed stable at speeds that would tear apart a Focke-Wulf. In a vertical dive, nothing in the Luftwaffe could catch a Thunderbolt. Zemp stopped trying to fight the war the Germans expected. He developed new tactics built around the P-47's actual strengths. Height advantage, diving, attacks, hit and run, never turn with the enemy. Dive through the formation, use speed and momentum. Zoom back to altitude, attack again. The 56th Fighter Group practiced these tactics through the summer of 1943 dive bombing runs, high-speed gunnery passes, energy management. Every pilot learned to think in 3 dimensions, use altitude like currency, trade height for speed, trade speed for position. Never get slow. Never try to turn. By September, Zemp's pilots were ready, but 8th Air Force bomber losses were accelerating. Missions to French targets cost 8 B-17s. German fighters hit the formations before American escorts arrived. The bombing campaign was failing. October 4th would be different. Zemp planned to put his new tactics into full combat test. 52 P-47s, all diving from altitude, all using speed instead of turning, all trusting the mathematics he had calculated. The mission brief that morning included one detail that changed everything. The bomber stream would fly at 22,000 feet. Zemp positioned his Thunderbolts at 30,000 to 8,000 feet of potential energy, ready to convert into diving speed. German radar tracked the formation crossing the Dutch coast. 73 Focke-Wulf 190s climbed toward the bomber stream. German pilots expected what they always saw. American fighters flying tight formation alongside the bombers. Easy targets. But the 56th Fighter Group wasn't escorting the bombers. They were hunting 8,000 feet above them. Zemp rolled his P-47 into a 70-degree dive. 51 Thunderbolts followed. The massive propeller bit into the thin air. Airspeed needles climbed past 300 miles per hour. 350, 400. The German fighters never looked up. Zemp's first burst of .50 caliber fire ripped through a Focke-Wulf's cockpit. What followed lasted 90 seconds. 51 more Thunderbolts dove through the German formation at speeds the F-190s couldn't match. Each P-47 carried 8 Browning M2 machine guns. Each fired 800 rounds per minute. Combined, the group put 68,000 rounds into the sky every 60 seconds. German pilots tried to brake, tried to turn, tried to dive away, but the physics were wrong. Zemp's wingman watched a Focke-Wulf try to dive away at over 500 miles per hour. The German pilot pushed too hard. The right wing folded backward and tore off. The Thunderbolts didn't dogfight. They made one high-speed pass, fired, dove through, climbed back to altitude and repeated. 4 minutes to regain 8,000 feet. 4 minutes to attack again. By the time the sky cleared, 0 bombers had been lost. The 56th claimed 21 confirmed kills, 8 probables, 16 damaged, with 0 P-47s lost. Headquarters didn't believe it. Investigators verified every claim. It was real. And it was only the beginning. In the days that followed, intelligence officers pored over German radio intercepts. Jagdgeschwader commanders reported something they had never seen before. American fighters attacking exclusively from above, diving at impossible speeds, refusing every turn fight, and climbing back into the sun before any counterattack could form. German pilots began calling the 56th Fighter Group a new name, Die Taucher, the divers. The Luftwaffe attempted to adapt. They ordered patrols to climb higher. They briefed their pilots on the Thunderbolt's new tactics. They warned them not to chase P-47s in a dive. But adapting is not the same as winning. The German fighters still had to climb to attack the bombers. And climbing meant giving away the altitude advantage that Zemp depended on. The next major test came on October 14, 1943. That date would enter history as Black Thursday, the worst day of the entire U.S. strategic bombing campaign. 291 B-17s from the 1st and 3rd bombardment divisions flew deep into Germany to hit the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt. The Luftwaffe threw everything they had at the formation, 300 fighters in rotating waves. The Mustangs weren't yet available in numbers. The escort line was thin. But the 56th Fighter Group was waiting. Zemp positioned his men 10,000 feet above the bomber stream. When German fighters appeared, dozens at first, then hundreds, Zemp didn't order a defensive escort pattern. He ordered a hunting formation. 89 P-47s dove simultaneously. To the bomber crews below, it looked like a waterfall of silver knives cutting through the blue sky. The Luftwaffe's assault on the bombers collapsed instantly. Their carefully planned attack runs turned into chaos as Thunderbolts struck from above at speeds no German plane could match. Some F-190s attempted to dive away, but the P-47s followed them down past 450 miles per hour, firing the whole way. In 90 minutes of fighting, the 56 claimed 28 German aircraft, with only 2 Thunderbolts lost. Both pilots bailed out over friendly territory. Despite the 56's performance, the raid on Schweinfurt still cost the U.S. 8th Air Force 60 B-17s and 600 airmen. It was a catastrophe, but in that catastrophe, something shifted. Air commanders finally saw that Zemp's tactics weren't an improvisation, they were the future of air combat. No more turning fights. No more boxing matches in the sky. Energy, altitude, speed, vertical dominance. The Thunderbolt was no longer seen as a lumbering heavyweight. It was a heavyweight that could punch from the top rope. By January 1944, the 56th Fighter Group was the highest-scoring American fighter unit in Europe. While other groups transitioned to Mustangs, Zemp's men refused them. They knew what the P-47 could do when flown correctly. German pilots learned to fear the sound of a diving Thunderbolt. Survivors described it as a tearing roar, sometimes followed by nothing at all. The P-47 had already blown through the fight and vanished back into the clouds. By the spring of 1944, the Luftwaffe was collapsing. Too many veteran pilots gone. Too many new pilots dying on their first mission. Too many Thunderbolts dropping out of the sun at terminal velocity. The turning point came on March 8, 1944. That morning, The 56th Fighter Group became the first U.S. fighter unit to achieve over 500 confirmed kills. Zemp himself scored his 5th victory that day, becoming an ace. His pilots presented him with a hand-painted sign, "Never turn, ever." The motto stuck. By D-Day, the German fighter force over northern France was a shadow of what it had been a year earlier. Zemp's tactics, now adopted across the entire U.S. Army Air Forces, had reshaped the air war. The Thunderbolt had become the deadliest high-altitude fighter in Europe. When the war ended, the 56th Fighter Group had destroyed over 1,000 German aircraft, more than any other U.S. fighter group, not because it was the fastest, not because it turned the tightest, but because one man refused to fight the enemy's war. Zemp understood the difference between the airplane pilots wanted and the airplane they had. He understood the mathematics of flight better than the Luftwaffe. He understood that altitude was power, speed was survival, and diving was victory. He understood that wars are won not by matching the enemy's strengths, but by using your own in ways they never expect. The Thunderbolt did not become legendary because it was perfect. It became legendary because its pilots learned to fly it perfectly. Find stories like this as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Thanks for watching.